Hello, everybody. I'm Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and I want to welcome you all here with me again tonight for Virtual Happy Hour. This is a pretty special virtual happy hour. You may have heard that our bookstore recently sold and we have new owners, and they are all three with me here tonight. So I am going to welcome Carroll Gelderman, Barkley Rafferty, and Christopher Tidmore onto the screen. Hi, guys.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way.
It's hard to get used to that. Which way to lean in, which way to point. There you guys are, over here. Thank you so much for joining me for Virtual Happy Hour. It's not every day you get to interview your own bosses, so this is going to be fun. I do want to say to, go ahead, Christopher, yes.
You won't hold the questions against you, you know. You just.
Yeah, this is all, what happens in Virtual Happy Hour stays in Virtual Happy Hour. I forgot to mention that. Everybody who's watching too, if you have any questions for any of us, please put them in the comments. We want to hear your suggestions. We want to hear what your favorite books are you think we should carry in the store. What are some past events or past things that has happened at the store that you really loved and you definitely like to see going forward? Type that in the comments. We want to answer all of your questions and hear your suggestions. So to get us started, I want to know what made you guys really want to be a part of the bookstore.
A fit of insanity.
Okay, that was the start. That was the start. Is that what pushed you over the edge?
No, what pushed us over the edge was COVID for sure. You know, we did this, Christopher and I have been married for a few years, and Carol and I, and of course now Christopher, Carol and I have been friends since we were little kids. Carol was simultaneously, as we were talking to Britton about buying the bookstore, Carol was talking to Kathy, the owner of Still Perkin, downstairs at the rink about buying the coffee shop. And we had a conversation one evening at our condo about just kind of what our joint ideas about the rink were. And we had the same idea. We wanted to build a community space. And we started sitting here and sitting there and just really talking about what our ideas for the rink as a whole were, and realized that they were the same. And at that point, we jumped in together into this crazy world. And so in addition to pulling in the locals that we love and reminding them that the bookstore is here and reminding them that the coffee shop is here, we are building out a beautiful new coffee space and using the bookstore as kind of the foundation of cultural language for the new kind of space of learning that we hope the rink becomes. And that's what pushed us over the edge, is that desire for community that COVID took away from us.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, so Still Perkin also recently just sold a little bit before the coffee shop. So you guys actually own Still Perkin and the bookstore. And I think that's going to be really fun moving forward. Like it's you can see all the potential right now, but like as we move forward and bringing those two spaces together, because there's a plan for a wine bar, coffee shop thing. What's happening? Like I know there's stuff coming up into the bookstore, bookstores going down there. Like how does that play in?
The first thing I'm going to say is that none of it will work out the way that we think it will right now.
Of course, it's all preliminary. This is all. We're going there. We're still in the vision, and what the end product turns out to be is going to be amazing. But we're not sure what those dots, how we get.
There are a couple of things I know for sure. One of which is the bookstore is not changing spaces. The bookstore, as the bookstore exists today, is not changing dramatically. It will be at the corner of the top landing in the ring, and it's going to stay there. So that's one. The second thing is Still Perkin will close in its current space, and a Fidelity Bank will replace that space. And we are opening the Chicory House, a new coffee space / bistro, Britannia Street bistro space that is going to be opening in what used to be the Mignon Children's Store. And while it won't be directly connected to the bookstore, it's going to be right downstairs, and it'll be more visually connected to the bookstore.
And actually, and you'll be able to step outside. It'll be open to tables throughout the landings and right outside of the Garden District Bookshop. So if you want to have a cup of coffee, maybe a glass of wine, read a book, have a meal. You'll be able to do that as a continuous space. It's important to note that the commercial kitchen that is part of the chicken house does run directly under and is part of the property of what is the Garden District Bookstore. So it does play itself very well together as a combination to sort of power the neighborhood and create a sense of place.
And hopefully we'll have some staff that work in both spots. It'll have like a very nice family vibe. That's the goal.
Absolutely. We want everybody to know one another.
And let me praise these two about family vibe. For that explains where we're currently sitting. So for those that haven't figured out that we are in an unusual looking space, if you've been to the Garden District Bookstore not in the last month, you kind of get what it is. And I'm going to let Barkley and Carroll come through because all I said was I want to clean out a storeroom. Everything beyond putting paint on the wall was all because of these two and what they created. So I'm going to be the cameraman as they describe where we are sitting.
Wait, but I have
Yes.
wait.
No. Show us the children's room.
Now,
All
Do
right.
it.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
It's
look
like
at
in the
those
Yarn
butterflies.
film.
Okay. Well, first things first. We have this 400 square foot space that now has a really fun astroturf carpet, a bunch of bookshelves, tons and tons and tons of kids' books all over the place. It directly faces into the arcade, which is awesome. Kids see it from outside and they really want to come in and play. It's a dedicated space with a sofa, a really comfortable sofa, and lots and lots and lots of pillows for the kids to just hang out on the floor and play. And we've watched so many children, especially this afternoon as they've come to get their hair cut right down the hall at the new Kim's at the Rink, which is upstairs now. They are coming to play. They're coming to pick out a book. It's better than ice cream. And that's what we're looking for. Kids have also been so affected by the past year. They've been taken away from their family. They've been taken away from their friends. They haven't been able to go outside as much. And they need a space that's just their own. And while we don't know what the space will be in the future, we know that for right now and for definitely the next 6 to 10 months, it's going to be a kiddo area. And we want to keep that vibe going for as long as we can. We have big butterflies up on the wall. It's
These are
super
beautiful. Love those butterflies.
Done by
done by
Barkley's
Katie
mother,
Rafferty.
who's an artist.
Katie Rafferty did the butterflies for the Louisiana Children's Museum, amongst many other art projects. And she somehow miraculously, after her daughter talked to her, came up with about 4 or 5 more.
We stole them.
And so we stole them and created this room, which was the labor of, as much as we'd like to say it, we cleaned it out. It was really the labor of her mother and her mother who decided
And
that
her
they
cousin.
was, and her cousin who decided to come through and help us clean this out. This had been a storeroom for over 20 years. And it kind of,
I gotta say, so my piece of this too is like, yeah, that has been a storeroom with just stuff would just pile up in there. I mean, it's a loose organizational system, let's say. And when you guys came in and you're like, yeah, we're gonna turn this into a kids' room, I was like, okay. I mean, I'm in, but we're just gonna sit over here and wait this one out. And within like a week and a half, it went from this storeroom with just boxes and things all in it to this space that is absolutely amazing. And I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed.
Well, and it's because as I said, literally the first day that we were here, we came in and we said, look, we're not trying to change anything. We are trying to build upon the expertise that the staff here at the bookstore has brought forward for so many years. And yours is in particular, Raina, and it came through to try to build on those traditions and make it a bit more. And the Garden District Bookshop, for those that don't know, has been around in this current location for just over 40 years. It actually started about just under 42 years ago on Jackson Avenue and grew out of the Maple Street Bookshop. And the reason I tell you a little bit of that history is the Maple Street Bookshop was famous for having a children's room that was a lot like this. It was a children's place. And we were just sort of feel like we're carrying on that tradition. That was a place where uptown kids would have a place to go, read books, play, and actually engage their imagination. And it's one of many changes that we've been able to do because of the extra space that we've been afforded in the last couple of months with some of the basic redesigns of the Rink Shopping Arcade. It's been a wonderful opportunity that wasn't available a year or two ago, but is now.
Absolutely. And something too, like, at least living on the outside of the Garden District, when you think of the Garden District, you don't automatically think kids. But that's absolutely not true. We have kids in there all the time, and you guys are Garden District kids. So, well, they are growing up, and coming to the bookshop, but just like knowing that there are families and kids in the Garden District and surrounding areas growing up and needing these spaces to be. I think that's really great that you guys have this sort of intimate connection, not just with the bookstore, but with the area, with the Garden District specifically.
Well, and I was talking to my dad about this a couple of nights ago. The Garden District, it's not just the Garden District. While the Garden District does look a lot more like it did when my parents moved into the neighborhood, I was probably 4 or 5 when they moved into the neighborhood. So they had 3 little kids, all under the age of 4, totally wild and crazy. There were a ton of kids in the neighborhood, just a ton, a lot of boys especially. I always felt left out. Carol is actually quite a bit younger than I am, so she probably came at the tail end of that, and there might not be any kids in the neighborhood, but now they're back. But it's not just that. It's the fact that the Irish Channel has changed so much since Katrina. There's so many young families in the Irish Channel. There's so many young families in Central City. There's so many young families that support us, and our Washington Avenue and Britannia Street location really makes us a central space that hasn't been recognized since Barry Fox, the previous owner of the rink, revisited the rink so many years ago. And now these communities are just searching for a home, a home together. And again, that's the whole point. It's not, while we are definitely, especially in New Orleans, identified by where we live and who our neighbors are and that sort of thing, everybody's kind of just walking around the neighborhood together and trying to make friends. I
mean, it's used to say that you couldn't walk through the Irish Channel without hitting somebody partying. Now you can't walk through the Irish Channel without hitting a stroller.
Yeah.
I would like to point out that we're actually as close to the Central City, or as some have redubbed it, the Faubourg Liverday, as we are. I don't say that lightly. It's where a lot of what had been pioneering young people were coming into a very vital neighborhood and regenerating it. But also, it's a place where a lot of multi-generational families are having new families through, and we are kind of here at the nexus. We're showing you a children's room, and I know Barkley and Carroll have a few of their favorite kids' books. We're going to share a little bit today to get it through. But we've got, she's looking at me like, you have a body.
I do.
It's like, you're looking like that's here's a new kids' book. Barkley, she's 75. She might have grandchildren. It's like that.
For kids young and old.
Yeah.
That's right.
I like to tell this story to the point where you and everyone around it are so sick of this story, ladies and gentlemen, that I can tell you that they're all going to look at me like, not again.
But this is a whole new audience, Christopher. So here we are. Share it.
Most New Orleanians, much less tourists, have no idea why Britannia Street is called Britannia Street. And it was because it was supposed to lead, if you notice on Britannia Street, it sort of bends into a park area. And it was supposed to lead into something called a Britannium. In Athens, there's a Britannium. It was part of the Agora. That was a place where food, ideas, shopping, everything met. It was the town center of ancient Athens. And we like to say that the Britannium was supposed to be built in and around the 1850s, and it never was built. We like to say that in 1880, without realizing, when they put in this roller skating rink, it would eventually grow into a Britannia. It just took about 150 years to catch up. And that's what we're trying to build, a place where you can come and bring a child, a grandchild. At the same time, you can come and meet your friends of all ages, and people of all races, backgrounds, creeds are welcome into into an arcade that not only has a vital independent bookstore, one of the largest and best in the city, I say with prejudice, but also what's going to have not only a coffee house, but a little bit of a bistro, so where you can get basic food, salads, soups, sandwiches, where you can get your hair cut and styled at Kim's, which is her, like, she just came from Kim's, or go and make a bridal registry, or get different shopping over at Judy's at the Rank, get design things at John Baruch's, or go to the bank at Fidelity. It's really it's a radical concept for 1922. It's called a department store, but it really is a town center for everyone. So.
What I love how within the Rink, we know this from working there for so long, that all of the shops, we do have this family community feel. We know people's names. I've got their personal numbers, in my phone. Just we're in touch with each other. But trying to pull the public in from outside and show them that community atmosphere that we already feel inside the Rink, I love your guys' vision for that, and I hope we can really capture that feeling that we have already with the public as they come in, for sure.
Well, what we're trying to, so this doesn't sound like too much of an infomercial for our regular viewers. One of the things we're working on, as you see this, is being able to power this space for other events, not just book events, which we're increasing, and we're getting back into doing live events we can talk about, but also to be able to present poetry nights, musical nights, to be able to have a place where people can have civic meetings, can have, so we've got the Churchill Society of New Orleans is doing their Wine, Wit, and Wisdom, which is open to the public on May 18th as a first live event, and anybody can come. That kind of thing. So we're trying to create and tell people, hey, this wonderful space is here. It is here to be used, and welcome the community into it. And that's kind of the case we're doing. Hopefully, it's our plan that once we get a little out of COVID, everyone's safely vaccinated, we can start energizing this a little bit into the early evening, a little bit later in the evening, where people can come by and have a cup of coffee or have a glass of wine and look at a book and chat with their friends and meet before dinner or whatever, what have you, have an hors d'oeuvre, what goes through. It's a dream.
So basically, we're never going home.
Yeah.
That's what we're learning. And that will be the takeaway from this virtual happy hour is I'm working late. Okay. Linda says, my grandson is reading over and over Older Than Dirt by Don Brown. I'm going to have to look that one up.
Sure. I don't know.
What it is. I don't either, but we're going to have to get it if...
I actually am like 90% sure that we have it in stock.
Probably do.
I really don't know that much about it because I think it's something that another friend recommended to us, and I remember the title, and so I threw it on a list. But that's great. Great recommendation, Linda.
I'm going to put the link to it in the comments. It's
the link to our website.
Yeah.
Great. So we do have it in stock.
We don't have it in stock, but I have the link.
Okay.
So you can order it. If you're watching this, you can order it. Oh, wait. The hardcover is. Never mind. The hardcover is in print, but not in the store.
Very good.
So either way, though, you can look at it. You can order it from the website, which we can get in just a few days. And we'll probably be getting one for the store since it came with a recommendation. It's like a graphic novel history of the earth.
Cool.
Oh.
So I'm in.
I had a conversation last night about graphic novels with my cousin Daniel and my brother Patrick. Both of them are in their 30s, and they were over for dinner because they invited themselves over for dinner. And
Their family.
Yeah, Daniel was doing a Batman podcast.
He was doing. All right, let me explain this. He was doing a podcast, which is a television show, and it's. He wasn't doing a DC comic.
A podcast.
He was one of the people
he was
on
participating
the podcast.
Yes. Okay. But we were talking to Patrick. Patrick was kind of questioning Daniel about the best Gotham graphic novels that Daniel's been reading for years and years and years. And Patrick looked at us and said, "That I would love to read that. You should have those in the store. You really should expand that selection." And To be perfectly frank, that is the last thing you should ever ask me about. Ask me about cookbooks or children's books or cookbooks and children's books, and but not that. So any other recommendations you have for that section, please send them our way because we really want to make that happen.
Please. And when we say that, we're not lightly saying, hey, we want your input. One of the challenges of running an independent bookstore, which Raina can talk at this in even greater eloquence than we can, is how you curate the collection for your customers. So you're responding to this. Well, even though we're one of the larger independent bookstores, we'll never be able to be one of the national chains. We can't.
We don't want to be.
We don't want to be.
Right.
So when we put graphic novels, the challenge is, and I'm somebody who collected comics all throughout high school and college. I actually collected graphic novels for a period of time when they started coming to age. And we can't be Crescent City Comics or one of the stores that have wall after wall of graphic novels. So we have to appeal to a particular audience. We're finding the same challenge with something that, ladies and gentlemen, I've been driving poor Raina crazy with. And it's called the science fiction section, which had never been a huge part. It was an important part, but not a huge part of this business. And we're expanding it. We have to curate it in such a way that it doesn't crowd out other books while still responding to our audience and what is happening. And it's a tricky situation. So we depend upon the customers, our members, the 4,000 people who receive our emails and those who support this business to come in and say, look, you need to carry this, because ultimately an independent bookstore survives by word of mouth, by telling your friends, I got this great book here. This is a wonderful place to go. You need to go take a look at it. And it's sort of an organic progression from therein.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think people take for granted. You hear that. You hear word of mouth. But you take for granted how much impact that really does have. When you tell your friends verbally, when you put it on your personal Facebook page, hey, I went to Garden District Bookshop. It was great, blah, 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 blah. That has much bigger impact than any Facebook ad we could take out or, billboard or anything like that, because that is a personal connection that you guys are making with your friends and family and telling them your personal story about your experience at Garden District. And I will say from my part, and I'm sure from Carol, Barkley, and Christopher as well, thank you. Every time you say something.
It also, we're not just curating the books on the shelves as well. We're so lucky to basically inherit a really wonderful staff. And I could shout this from the rooftops. I already have. I've already screamed it out a million times to everybody that I meet. But I want to say it again to people who don't necessarily hear me in the store every day. Our staff has varied interests. They have varied skills. They have varied personalities. And that's wonderful. That's exactly what we're looking for, because we want people who can talk to different customers who come in. And they've been wonderful working with us and kind of teaching us the ropes and helping us figure things out, as we also try to change some procedures to reflect our own interests and skills and personalities. And, just like any relationship, it takes a little while to get to know one another, and it works out in the end. And so we're so lucky to have them to kind of lean on. And thank you all for helping us out with that.
Oh, absolutely. This is part of the job that I love, the curating of the books and the talking to customers. And you guys, we're learning what your interests are. I know Christopher's got sci-fi and nonfiction. I know that Barkley has the cookbooks and the kids' books. And I'm still working on pegging Carol.
Classics.
All right. Classics and film appreciation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let me brag why on these two, because ladies and gentlemen, I'm a washed up scribe. What is the last thing? Yeah, this is
Hang 10.
Hang 10. Cowabunga.
Washed up.
Yeah, washed up. I've been a radio talk show host and a newspaper editor for the last 23 years. And so it's the last refuge of a journalist is to buy a bookstore. But they actually
such an asshole.
say that. apologize. Anyway, you're just supposed to say something nice about me and then curse at me behind closed doors. You understand how this works.
Okay.
All right. So when we came in here, we had some conventions. It was Carroll's background is in film, producing scripts, and worked in New York and came back at around COVID. Barkley's background is in marketing. She was events director for a historic house museum called Longview. We do carry those books about Longview in the store, by the way. But also it was an expert on food and spices to the point where she opened an international spice import company called Royal Merchant and worked with chefs and had done actually in the 2 years.
Still do. Yeah.
In the 2-3 years before we bought the bookstore, she had done a series of recipes and packets that matched spices that she imported with famous chefs here in New Orleans and recipes that did well. And so when they came in with perspectives of what is going on in aspects of the world. And so one of the things we showed you the room, one of the things that's most interesting is how the cookbook section and how the contemporary nonfiction sections about what's going on have improved and grown and received a sort of new life because of both of them and advocacy that has come through. And ultimately, Carroll won't be happy until we end up figuring out how to put a big screen at the end of the rink and have movie premieres here, which sounds like theater, but actually was one of the things we talked about today, Raina, if I'm not mistaken, about a documentary that an author had done that wants to come in and do a book a couple of years ago called Matt Mosley, who wants to come in and premiere his new book. And he was the first guy to swim across Lake Pontchartrain. And he's got a follow-up book on that. And he wants to re-show his movie, which comes. So, I mean, this gives him the whole town square kind of aspect that we're trying to do.
Before we bought the bookstore, we were talking about it for a couple of months. It's not like it happened overnight, right? As you can all imagine. And one of the many, many, many ideas that we had during some wonderful conversations was, wouldn't it be fun if, and it always started with a, wouldn't it be fun if? Wouldn't it be fun if we had books that were better before they were turned into movies, or books that were just as good as they were, movies that were just as good as they were as books, sort of club, where we could do something similar to what Christopher was saying, where we could have a big projector at the end of the hallway and like a popcorn machine and sit there and talk about it from the perspective of someone in film and the perspective of someone in literature. So we have tons and tons of fun ideas like that really just respond to something that Britton Trice, the previous owner and current consultant at the bookstore, we love Britton. One of the things that he said to me in one of our conversations early on in this process, he said, the bookstore is going to change and that's natural. It's going to reflect the new owners. And it's going to reflect your interests because that's just how ordering works. And I understand there are going to be many fewer books about things that I want to read. And there are going to be a lot more books about things that you want to read. And we're so lucky to be in this like hyperactive information age where we can get more real time information about what our customers want to read right away, like through your comments. And so ping us, shoot us a comment about what you want to add. We'll have it on the stores in a week if we can get it.
And I would like to say two elements about that. First, the number of customers of the Garden District Bookshop, and this included owners at the time when they were getting ready to buy, who didn't realize that not only can we order hardback books through our website, we can pretty much order ebooks. We can do everything that Amazon can do, and only you're supporting a local bookstore at gardendistrictbookshop.com. Most people don't know that. Most of our regular customers don't know that they have a way of accessing a universe worth of books that we may not even have on the shelves by going to our website, and the money is flowing straight here into New Orleans, here into trying to create a town circuit. But I also want to say, Saturday night, we're honoring Britton, and I think the most appropriate way possible after his 40 years of doing this, and we won't let him leave. He keeps trying to retire and keep dragging it back, coming in as a consultant. His high school dear friend, Walter Isaacson, is having the national premiere of his new book, Code Breakers. If you've been watching the Today Show or listening to NPR, listening to my radio show, but listening to others, national feed, you've heard about this book, Jennifer Nuna, and the race to basically change and fix genetic problems around the world. This is part of the reason the coronavirus vaccine was able to be produced in a year, because of what's called CRISPR technology. And ultimately, we are premiering this at a private house event, which happens to be Carol's parents' house. But it is.
Carol went to go make us another drink.
Because I can honestly say that these are, mine happens to be not high octane, but they took the happy hour notion to heart.
Sure.
That's right.
Yes.
An opportunity.
I was telling Raina, ladies and gentlemen, that I used to do a radio show in Bourbon Street, a statewide show, and it was for 5 years. And we'd come on at 5 o'clock, just like this, and we'd do a 2-hour show, and we would say, we got to joking about drinking on the air so much we started playing bingo on top radio stations. And you won a bottle of booze if you guessed what we were drinking that particular day. So. Yeah.
So,
anyway,
Raina, we're having a hard time seeing the comments that people are leaving, which I'm so happy. I'm so happy that people are leaving comments. Thank you all so much. But we're having a hard time seeing them because, number one, I think my eyes are a little blurry. But number two, the stool is too far away. So if you could help us, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we have a few more comments. Linda says that she loves Patricia Cornwell and listens to her audiobooks all the time, and asked if we have them in audio. So we actually have a few audiobooks on CD, but we're mostly transitioning over to digital audiobooks. Yeah. And we partner with Libro FM, which you can see their books on our website, or you can go straight to the Libro FM website and purchase books through them or through our website. And it's just as if you purchased a physical book from us. We get a percentage just like you would have purchased a physical book. So they are the best way to get audiobooks through us. And I will actually put a link in the comments specifically to Patricia Cornwell's audiobooks on Libro FM. But that will give you guys a portal into Libro FM. Cool. Sorry, I answered that question.
I'm so glad you did. And I want to note that, while there definitely is an audience out there for some cassette-based and CD-based books, we don't have the space in our store anymore. And did you see that the person who invented the cassette tape actually passed away today? It made me very yes. We're just full of life, but anyway.
I'm saying cassette audiobooks, other than the library, what do you buy them?
We had a few in the store when we purchased the store.
We did. And that said, anything that's still available on CD and audiobook, we can order that for you. Yeah. Even if we don't have it in the store, if you really want a physical CD, we can order it for you and have it in about a week. So. Absolutely. And then we got a hi and welcome to the wonderful world of book selling from John Cavalier. Have you guys met John Cavalier yet?
No, we have not had the privilege.
He owns Cavalier Books in Denham Springs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. But one of the things that's been wonderful is the support of other booksellers, and what a great community it's been. And it was interesting because 2 weeks after we bought the bookstore, Raina said, hey, you want to go over to Baldwin Books for the opening there? And DJ Johnson, who was opening almost simultaneously to when we took over, came in, and we supported. Other bookshop owners like Candace at Tubby and Coos and others have lent their time, their efforts, and frankly, it's nice to be part of a community. It's most of the rest of the business world does not operate that way. It's cutthroat, whereas in this world, it's like, how can I help you? How can I do this? And any way we can help other independent booksellers, and we're here to help as well.
And we haven't been shying away from shamelessly asking for help. So if you have any suggestions, we will take them. We will not take them as criticism. We will not take them with a sour, face. We will take them absolutely as a way to help new, young, eager people in the industry, because the whole point of jumping into this bookstore was to preserve this store as, a wonderful institution for another 40 years, because Britton worked his behind off to keep it here. And I benefited personally from that as a kid and as an adult. So.
I mean, Carroll and Barkley walk down the street daily to come to the Garden District Bookshop. For me, this was the end of a pilgrimage route. For a kid who grew up in the suburbs of New Orleans, coming to Magazine Street, going to the bookstores that lined at the time, and then ending up here, this mecca of first edition signed authors, place that launched careers from Anne Rice to James Lee Burke to Rebecca Wells to others. It was the highlight of the month in so many ways, and the emotional connection that people have to this place just cannot be quantified. The history that has come out of these walls, and we're less owners than caretakers of a tradition that exists here. So.
Yeah, we still like to be in charge. So
You did. Speak for yourself.
I can see you, Christopher. You're like this tall, and you're wandering into the Garden District Bookshop, and your budding scholar self, just seeing all the books on the shelf, and like, which one of these can I get? Can I get 2? Can I get 4? Can I please have this whole stack of books? Like, I can just see that, and I love it so much.
The only thing you missed was my mother saying, "No, no."
That's what moms have to do that. Moms have to be look, you can get 1 book.
No, it was, and my mother was actually quite good about that sort of thing. If I wanted to, and she used to say, the only thing is you have to read them. And then when I read them by the end of the day, she realized this was a losing proposition. So, but no, it really is. When you go into the history of this bookshop, like so many others, but particularly here, you look at great authors who couldn't get recognized anywhere else that came in, met Britton Trice and said, I'll help get the word out about you. And this is where other bookstores play a critical role. My favorite story about it, for those that don't know, is Rebecca Wells. It's the author of the Yaya books. Barkley makes fun of me, but I happen to love certain types of what is considered feminine fiction. In other words, she calls it bad romance novels. But
good books. They're called good books.
Oh, good books. And I
just don't like Hallmark movies. Sorry,
yeah.
Hate me all you want. I just don't like them.
But one area we agree is the Little Altars Everywhere and subsequent Yaya sisterhood books are works of tremendous. Interestingly, the word that came to my mind was faith in family, in place, in identity, in culture, in who you are. And when Rebecca Wells wrote the first book, she basically wrote it with a publisher that was going out of business in Seattle. And she couldn't get arrested, much less printed. It was one step above being self-published, and not much of one. And it was because of 3 bookstores, this being one of them, that the word got out, and they said, these books are incredible, and started calling other bookshops and spreading it, and created a New York Times bestseller 20 times over. And more importantly, someone who was telling the story of the culture of Louisiana to a whole world audience that would never have been told. That's what an independent bookstore does, more than anything else. We get the word out to authors, and when you walk in, and I'll pay you a compliment right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I basically say Amazon has algorithms. We have Raina rhythms, and we got the Amy algorithms, and it basically boils into, I think they're psychic because they look at somebody like this very intently. They say, "You like?" I do. Yeah, you do. And here's your book. Here's another one. Here's another. And before they know it, these poor people got like 8 books walking out, and they're so happy because they find the books. That's what an independent bookstore does that you get nowhere else. And so it's what we like to think we do.
That's absolutely one of the most fun things about the job. You come in, you say, oh, I need a new book. Well, tell me something you liked. Tell me something you didn't like. And you can give me 1 or 2 out there. And I'm like, all right, I'm on it. Because now I know a little bit. I know the little bit I need to know. And I can start, handing you books and finding that perfect book that people didn't even know existed. And you can see they flip it over and they read the first paragraph on the back and they go, I'm going to buy this one. This is the one. Yes, I've done it. That sense of sort of the scavenger hunt moment where you found the prize at the end is something that I really missed in the beginning of COVID. That was that thing. You can't do it over the phone the same way. You can't do it, no one's here, and you can't just get that scavenger hunt moment. And as people started coming back into the store, we were able to do that more and more and more. And now we do it like every day again. I love it. Love that for sure.
And I also say that this is a safe place for bibliophiles. For people who have book addictions, the bookstore, its official book club is still virtual. It's got other book clubs that are starting to meet here. And the fascinating thing is how the book clubs teach us things. So for those, and Renee can speak to this even more detail, but my book club said, why don't we try reading this Maggie O'Farrell book, Hamnet? And I've been screaming it from the mountaintops. It's about William Shakespeare's wife and what her life in Stratford, which I would not have been I love historical fiction, but it wouldn't have probably been the first choice I would have done, as much as I love Shakespeare. It wouldn't. And yet we read it, and Brenda's like, are you going to assault the customers saying they should are you just going to like start throwing the books at people and knocking them out? But that kind of thing. And that was I learned from the people that came into the store, something I didn't know. And I know you have that same experience with the book that you read here.
Oh, absolutely. This is our book club book for next month. This is what I'm reading right now. And I had never read an Ishiguro book until book club. And, is one of those authors, I'd probably like this, but I've never gotten to it, And then we read Plain View of Hills last year. And that was my first one that I had read of his. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. And I'm so glad book club pushes you to move that book to the top of your TBR. These books you maybe never would have picked up, or you just haven't gotten to for whatever reason in life. And now I've got to read it by next month. Okay, here we are. And I love that. I never joined. This book club was the first book club I'd ever joined. And Ted ran it before I did. And I just went occasionally, and had a great time. And then when Ted left, I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do this. And my biggest concern was actually finishing, like, okay, now I actually have to finish the last page of every book by the book club date. So far, I've made it. But I do love that about book club and joining a book club is you're pushed to read books you wouldn't normally read. And as a reader, I enjoy that. But as a bookseller, it's even more, I feel like, important because there are these books that I should have read, and book club helps me get through those. This thick ones, I'm currently listening to Shuggie Bain. It's like this big. And I am not afraid to say that I'm intimidated by big books. Like if it's over 386 pages, I'm like, ooh, okay, I guess. But book club, I've read like 3 or 4 for book club that are 700 plus pages, and have loved every one. So I don't know what the big deal is.
There's a dirty little secret and why we need your help for another reason. So people will come up to me and say, wow, I've always wanted to own a bookshop. I can't believe you did it. And partially it's a little pity because they're like, are you sure you made the right financial decision? But most of the time they were like, this has been my dream my whole life to do it. You're surrounded by books. You can read anything you want. And you don't want to really tell them, well, here's the problem. You're working 60 hours a week. You're trying to make more time to read. It's an embarrassment of riches, and you really can't read everything. And you hate to admit it because this is what you wanted to do your whole life. And you're having to choose, like anything else, the books that are around. And just because you're surrounded by books doesn't mean you got everything covered. So book clubs help. You help. The audience, the customers help.
Yes.
And it makes all the big difference. And Raina's helped. Let me brag on her. So, as I told you, I'm the lowest form of life for journalists. Just so you know. It's just we look up to lawyers. And we're like that's like looking up to axe murderers. But anyway, so
and he hasn't had anything to drink, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and I'm the actual silver.
He's been drinking like iced tea.
So I host a radio show, and I used to be a news director of 99.5 WRNL, and still host a radio show for him. It runs on Sundays from 8 to 9 in the morning, and it's 93.9 FM Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. The reason I tell you that is not to plug my radio show, what I do, but because Raina's been coming on and doing, we call it the Book Minute, but it's actually the Book 5 Minute. But it's 3 or 4 books. And the number of people, because it's normally a political talk show, it's covering, like right now, the second congressional district race. We had a couple of candidates in this week, that kind of stuff. So a lot of the audience is not used to, they don't listen to book TV or book talk, and they wouldn't spend the time. I have gotten probably 30 or 40 emails about people, how much they're saying, God, I'm always looking for stuff to read. And when Raina came on and suggested these books, I would never thought to do this, and I've been loving hearing that, what's coming up, particularly the Shigakara book that has come through. And that thing, you can catch it yourself if you on Sunday mornings around 8:30 in the morning, or on 99.5 or 93.9 FM Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time. But that ability for people to say, "Oh God, this engagement," it creates a community, and it's something we're trying to do in a projective way, not just in conventional media, but with this digital happy hour, which is one of the best things that you've created since COVID. That I'm proud to say is going to continue forever, as long as you're stupid enough to stay with us, so.
Hey, you keep letting me do virtual happy hour, I'll be here. One of the great things about virtual happy hour and Zoom events is that people from all over the world really can tune in. Speaking of which, if you're hearing me now, type in and tell us where you're viewing from. Because that's always a fun thing to do, and like I said, it's a way to stay in touch with our customers who aren't necessarily right down the street as well. We do have a couple more comments, so I will read Laura Fuller's comment. She is part of our book club and says that I do an amazing job leading the book club, and I appreciate that very much, Laura. I really do. Hope, she has been a Garden District Bookshop customer for like 30 plus years, and I'll just read her comment. So I'm thrilled that y'all will be carrying on, and I will still have my favorite bookshop and coffee shop. I look forward to meeting y'all on her next visit.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. We look forward to meeting you.
And if I remember correctly, Hope is in Austin, Texas.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things that, as COVID comes down, Raina and I were talking about this today. We're going to have to do we'll probably do fewer and fewer Zoom events, but we're not going to eliminate them at all. We're going to do them consistently, not just the happy hour, but others, because the number of customers, people who love this bookshop, that live elsewhere, and this is a pilgrimage they might make once or twice a year, they kind of stay engaged as part of our family. We love it, and it gives the connection around it. And we've talked to some of our fellow booksellers who are saying, "Look, I had 600 people on Zoom." And I'm like, 600 people, which is more than We got 150 coming to Isaacson trying to be COVID, and we're nervous. We're like, but that's still incredible. We're like, 600. Yeah, I sold a book. I sold a book to somebody in Switzerland, and you realize that technology, while it has its separation factors that you have to be aware of, at the same time can bring us together as well.
I'm envisioning book tours a little differently post-COVID. I'm really hoping that, like, if you have a 10-city book tour, that the last event is actually a Zoom event. So because you have all the stops that authors typically make, plus their hometown or something, and that's great. But a lot of times those are going back to the same places. And us here in New Orleans and being around for so long, we benefit from that because we do get a lot of touring authors through our bookstore. But there's so many littler places that don't. And these Zoom events have allowed not only us to have people from all over the world viewing, being able to come to New Orleans for a moment, for a couple of hours, but it also has given an opportunity to some of these smaller bookstores that are in locations where they never do get touring authors to host an event. And so I really hope on the other side of this, we have those touring authors, plus those two touring authors do at least like one Zoom event as part of their tour. So we really do get to keep that international feel. And maybe sometimes we'll host those Zoom events, and sometimes we'll be able to host those authors in person. And so, it doesn't go away completely.
I think there's a blend of it. I think you have to get back to, people are anxious for connection. I thought what was interesting about, I won't get into, this is not too much of a political argument. I think this is interesting with the president's speech last night, was when he made the statement, we all crave the connection of people, and we lack that. And so we all, and as bibliophiles, we crave that, the ability to talk about what we're excited about, the books that we find. But there's also a statement that we live in a very fast world, and those options aren't always there. And so Zoom and the other platforms such as this one allow us to make those connections in such a way, and can augment our social connections, even though we don't want to replace them. So.
Right. I'm looking forward to when this is in addition to and not a replacement of, for sure.
So, and I think that goes well. And I think there's also a fusion of them. You were already seeing this before COVID, but I think we will see more and more. I mean, the live casting of this on Facebook and then YouTube events is connecting people that would love to go to some of our events but physically can't for whatever scheduling and all. By putting this on and multitasking this, so you might have live, but also one thing I want to invest in is, even though a computer can do everything, is a few decent digital cameras, so that when we have live events, we can stream them, and so those that can't show up can do it, and we can have the best of all worlds. So.
Yes. Ooh, having to figure out all the tech for that sounds interesting. But fun. We could do that for sure. I want to mention one more thing about the film, the movies. What if we did a book club that was like you read the book, like you could read Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood over the course of the month, and then at the end of the month, watch the movie and
I wonder where we could find a former movie producer who could lead a book club like that.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about and would love to do.
Very much so.
So, brainwaves.
And it's we still do it. For those that aren't in the uptown area of New Orleans, you may not know this, but anybody who is here knows that there's a theater called the Britannia Theater. It's founded by a man named Rene Brunet, and one of the things it's one of the oldest movie theaters in the country. It's run by a foundation. One of the things they do is run classic movies on Wednesday and Sunday mornings, so you can experience them on the big screen. We realized that there's so many classic movies that derive from books that you can't really readily see. You can call something up on Amazon, but it's not the same experience. People like to share it. And so Carroll, when this whole thing I think it was like our second conversation you brought up, you were like, we're going to have a movie night. And we're going to link it to a book, and we're going to do this. And I said, wow. And it connects people with us. And because of licensing, we can't ever charge for the movies. So it's going to be kind of a welcome event for the whole public. So.
Okay. Is The Toxic Avenger a classic?
Okay. So
sci-fi question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a feeling who sent that. It's Raina Caroline, who works here, and I have a bet that Christopher Rice tries to push us over the top on some of these. I'm challenging Chris. This is Raina has a great game that she plays where she says, suggest your favorite movie, and we'll suggest a book.
It's fun. It has been fun. So if you follow our Instagram stories, usually every Sunday we've been trying to do this. I usually will ask a question, and then however you answer the question, we'll recommend a book to you. And we did that. And Christopher Rice actually, he asked about, was it Killer Tomatoes?
It was so it comes in. The three of us are sitting there and saying, he says, "What book would you suggest for Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes?"
Yes.
Which is a Christopher Rice question.
Yeah.
But it was actually a fascinating question. We sat around for about 15 minutes. I think we finally came up with Robert Asprin's Fool's Company series, or some of the comedy stuff that you'd find from Terry Pratchett or something. But it's compelling. So yes, The Toxic Avenger is a classic, and it could lead to a lot of different books we could suggest.
Do you like filmmaking books? Oh, Carol, what's your favorite filmmaking book? Do you have a favorite filmmaking book?
Gosh, I'm on the spot.
Yeah.
I went to school, like I majored in film studies, so I've read all sorts of like textbooks and books full of critical theory and things like that, but all of those books are kind of collecting dust on my shelf, honestly. I kind of like, after so many years of reading those books, I decided to take a break. And then my work just had me actually mostly watching movies. So I'm going to have to, now that I'm like back into it, though, like back with books, it's inspired me to get back into like actually reading about it and not just kind of experiencing it, you know.
We could definitely elaborate. We could have a small like filmmaking section because we have film. I mean, UNO has a great film program,
I know. Yeah.
right? So we
Is
could.
it Snoopy? Let me know if you have any suggestions. I'd love to hear them.
So have you read Robert Rodriguez's? What is it? Once. Oh, crap. I'm gonna have to look up the name of the book. He did Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
I haven't. Not read it.
That's his movie. And El Mariachi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm familiar, but I haven't read the book.
I can't. But his book is fascinating because it's all about how he got the money, basically, to make his first movie. And it is crazy pants. He joined like a medical research thing, and he like sold his bits for money, like lived in this like hospital complex for 30 days. Like he couldn't leave and see his family or anything. But at the end of it, he got this chunk of money. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but at the end he got this chunk of money, and that it was like $10,000 or $15,000 or something. And that was like the core bit of money that he used to make his first film. And so it's not just about the filmmaking, which is fascinating, but also like what he put on the line and what he did to get there. So that's always a fun one for an aspiring filmmaker who believes that, you know, they're going to be the next Robert Rodriguez. And I'm like, okay, here's what you have to do.
That's a crazy story, but it's not so unlike many stories I've heard having worked in the independent film business where people are, you know, scrapping together their own money to make their films. Like I worked with filmmakers who like sold old airplane parts to like raise the money to make their documentary. It's like always something like that. So I would love to read that. It's a good suggestion.
The passion that people have for their art, I'm going to connect this in to the bookstore. So they do, though, and you see that in filmmakers, you see that in artists, you see that in musicians, and you see that in authors and writers when they have this inspiration and they believe in it and they sit there every day and they write it out and they write it out and write it out until it's there and it's full formed. And as an indie bookseller, especially, I see myself, and you all now are part of this indie bookseller community, as an extension of how do we get this piece of art, this baby. This is someone's art that they got up early and they stayed up late and they didn't talk to their kids and they didn't go out last night so that they could finish this. How do we make it worth it? Mm-hmm. And we get to be part of the process that takes this art and puts it out into the world and gets it into the hands of somebody that we know we can learn who's going to love it, who's going to take this and who's going to cherish this piece of art, and whose wall does this go up on, you know, that is going to truly appreciate it in the way that it was meant to be appreciated. And we've all worked and done our little bitty piece to get it up on that right wall or in the ears of the right people. And I see that passion in the three of you, just like I do in Amy and Caroline and you other people that have come through the bookstore and I know will come into the bookstore in the future. And when I finally got the opportunity to sit and kind of really talk to you guys, that made me very happy. You don't know what neither one from both directions. Nobody knows what they're getting into. But when we got an opportunity to really sit and really talk, and knowing that you guys are still learning about the book industry, but your passion behind it is there, and that's what you need. If you want to be a good indie bookseller, that's all we need, is that love of reading and that passion for the written word and for it as an art form. And
I would say the passion for not just the readers, but for the authors. I think even the most avid reader often doesn't realize not only how hard it is to write a book, but how hard it is for anyone to recognize that you've written a book, even when it's published. And I use, and people are like, well, yeah, until you're discovered. And I remember something John Grisham said when I was at a conference once, and he said, until you're discovered, I always, whenever you go in a bookstore and there's an author there, buy the book, whether you're going to read it or not, just because it's a lonely life until you, quote, get discovered. And most of the time you don't. And I use this small example of getting discovered. When I was 16, 17, 18, there was a science fiction convention that I used to go to that was the Fontainebleau Hotel. It's a storage company. It was the cheesiest thing you could possibly go to. And so it had really low tier. If they had offers, it was like whoever they could track because I could pay them nothing. And there was one author who was a Hollywood. He was a script doctor, and he had worked on Beauty and the Beast. And he was there, and he couldn't give away his books. And he made some money in Hollywood, but not a huge amount of money, but enough to where he could kind of live in the French Quarter and kind of work on a few things. But he was still writing scripts, and just basically doing things to pay the bills. He was an older guy, and they're like, well, if you haven't made it by now, you're probably not gonna make it. But I love chatting with the guy. And he just come out with a new book series on a virus that would create superheroes called The Wild Cards. I love chatting with this guy. And I started reading his books, and I was really fascinated. This guy's great. And he's starting to get recognized as an author. He was kind of known in Hollywood, but not really by the general public. And so one time I'm sitting with him, he says, yeah, I got this idea about a wolf. Wolf? You write a book about a wolf? Yeah, wolf. Wolf in winter. Okay. Good luck to you. Didn't see the guy again. He moved. If you haven't figured out, his name is George R.R. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Here he was. At the time, he probably was older than I am, and I'm in my late 40s, so probably very late 40s, early 50s. And he's talking to a kid because nobody else wanted to talk to him. He had a couple books. But he had written multiple books. He had labored for years until finally the strike that comes, a little bit with Wildcard, but ultimately the Song of Ice and Fire comes through. And so it's not an instant, hey, I wrote one book and I get discovered. If that happens to you, congratulations, that's a wonderful thing. But these are people who dedicate themselves writing words out of words and making very little money for years on the hope that people will recognize what they're doing. You never know where it comes from.
No. And now we get to be part of that process. Well, you guys, we made it. We made it to 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
we didn't have a charger.
Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone who's watching, thank you very much for commenting. Thank you for watching. And our door is always open. Email us, call us, Facebook DM us, whatever it is. If you've got a book suggestion or an idea for something, we're open, and we will pass it along to the appropriate party down the line for sure. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks
Raina.
for having
Thanks
us.
for doing this, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for doing it every week. And for all of your regular viewers, thanks for helping Raina build something fun.
All right. Good night, guys.